All right, welcome along to the RT Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here, and joined this week by Marie Crowe, RT2FM's Game On presenter, and also Paul Corry, former UCD Sheffield Wednesday, Northampton Town, and Shamrock Rovers midfielder. It's been a historic week for the Irish women, with Vera Pauw's side not only beating Finland to make sure of World Cup playoff place, but then following it up yesterday with another 1-0 win over Slovakia, which means that they are going to skip and get a bye past the first round of the World Cup playoffs and straight into a second round with a one-legged tie, potentially meaning a place in a first ever major tournament, which is going to be taking place in Australia and New Zealand next summer. But we're also going to be talking to Denise O'Sullivan herself, the scorer of the winning goal against Slovakia. We were chatting to her a little bit earlier on, and it's about the campaign and her goal and just the growth of this Irish team after the heartache of the last qualifying campaign. It's also a big week for Shamrock Rovers on the European front. Their Conference League group stage campaign begins against Djurgardens of Sweden on Thursday at Tala Stadium, so we'll be looking ahead to that. We'll also be looking back at the weekend's SSC Electricity League action, including Shamrock Rovers' defeat to Bohemians, and we'll also be reacting to some of this week's Champions League action. But Marie, I guess best place to start, of course, is the Ireland women's national team, and what a week it was with those two 1-0 wins.
It's impressive for a lot of reasons. I think even if we go back to the start of the campaign when they had that devastating last-minute loss to Ukraine and missed out on getting to the Euros, the way that they have recovered from that and bounced back and kept moving forward is a real credit to them, because that could have ended a team. But what it seems to have done is to brought them even closer and tighter, and even to bring their goal into sharper focus, which is to get to a major tournament. And the way that they have gone through this campaign, like the results speak for themselves. To see them sitting there second in their group has been unbelievable. But they have fought for every single result that they have got in this campaign. And the work rate, the camaraderie, even the fact that if players are injured or are missing through suspension, they have now depth in the squad that they can bring in different players to replace them, and it doesn't feel like the squad is weakened, and that's something that we never really had before. Just overall, look, I know there's been a little bit of criticism about maybe their performances, but I can't overstate how important it is to commend them on how far they've come.
Yeah, let's listen to Vera Pauw, who was speaking after the 1-0 win over Slovakia to RTE Sports' Tony O'Donoghue.
Vera, congratulations. A campaign that ended with 5 victories, 2 draws and just 1 defeat by 1 goal to Sweden. Who would have thought that at the beginning?
Yeah, well, we did, but not in these figures, not in these facts. It's just unbelievable how this team is growing, because tonight it was not nice. We're not good football, not our best game, but you can see that these Tigers can fight for a win.
How pleased are you? Because this was a dirty game, a difficult game. It was a roll up the sleeves game.
Yeah, indeed. The opponent was by times really nasty, and I said, actually, this is an ugly game. But who cares? I mean, it's about 3 points. It's about winning, going to the second playoff round, skipping the first playoff round. It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
And one of the most important things in sport, they say, is momentum, and you're carrying that momentum through now.
Am I now missing the picture? Yeah, we are going to rethink what we're going to do. Friday is the draw, and Katie said make sure that you stay healthy, take care of yourself, get even fitter, and I think that those are the best words you can give.
The strange thing about that draw, though, you could get a seeded team, because it is an open draw. It's strange, isn't it?
It is very strange, and I don't think they will ever do this again, because everybody's talking about it, and it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
But with this campaign that we've had, everyone will fear getting Ireland now.
Yeah, well, I hope they don't fear us yet. I hope they fear us after that game.
Well, congratulations to you and the team, and well done.
Thank you so much.
All right, that is Ireland manager Vera Pauw speaking after the 1-0 win in Slovakia, which, as alluded to there, actually sends them straight into the second round of the playoffs, and then a one-legged tie, which will, if all goes well, take them directly to the World Cup. But Paul, the challenge of having to follow up, the high of beating Finland 1-0 and kind of doing the double over the team that were expected to be in the battle for that second place, and then finishing 7 points clear of them. Ultimately, it's a difficult thing for a team, I guess, to follow up a high like that, especially with only like a few days of difference, 5 days in between that, and then having to travel to Slovakia with another target in mind.
Spot on, Raf. And I don't know whether it was just the importance of the Finland game, but maybe some people are actually underestimating the importance of last night and how important that could be with regards to the journey to potentially qualifying to the World Cup. And I think Vera Pauw, first and foremost, deserves a hell of a lot of credit for that. Marie mentioned it there, that maybe some of the performances haven't been as spectacular to watch as in previous games, but at this stage of a campaign, it really is all about results, and it doesn't really matter how you go about getting them. I thought we played a little better last night than we did against Finland. Certainly the second half of the first half, we started to be a bit more aggressive with regards to pressing higher up the pitch, and then we started to see Denise and Katie and our attacking players start to come into the game. And listen, once we went 1-0 ahead, I can't remember too many threats on our goal. I don't remember Slovakia really penetrating us down the sides, or too many shots that Courtney Brosnan had to save. So they managed the occasion and they managed the game really well. And I mean, from our perspective of moving forward in the playoff games, I think we've shown throughout this group that we can actually go about winning games in a number of different styles. There's obviously the one against Finland where we're probably a little more patient and we sat back. But then when we played against Slovakia and Georgia, we're far more aggressive in our play. So it all bodes well. I think there would be great belief, there'd be great confidence amongst the squad all the way through to the management that irrespective of who we come up against, they can develop a game plan that we can be a threat against anybody.
Yeah, and Marie, like, it has been built on defense as well. When we look at the overall campaign, only 4 goals conceded.
Yeah, and like they've had 4 clean sheets in a row. And I think as well, when you go back to maybe some of the earlier games in the campaign, and there was so much debate about who should go on goals, we're giving Vera Pauw a lot of credit here, but Courtney Brosnan deserves a lot of credit as well, because, she weathered a storm there where she was facing a lot of criticism. There was a few dodgy goals conceded, but for a player like her to be in that situation, the way that she has reacted to any criticism, she has completely developed her game, her leadership, her communication. Any criticism that there was of her game, she worked on it, and she's got herself into a position now where she's such a crucial cog in that team. And we're looking at the defense and how strong it is. If they didn't have someone solid like Courtney in goals, they wouldn't have that confidence either. So she's been such a huge player for them. But look, that defense that you mentioned there, and they've had injuries of late. Niamh Fahey, of course, a massive leader for her to be injured, and then Megan Connolly as well, then from her rib injury the last day. But players are slotting in there, and clearly they know exactly what they're supposed to do, because you don't seem to really notice that these key players are missing, because whoever's coming in is able to do a job. And like Diane Caldwell getting her 90th cap there against Slovakia, Louise Quinn has just been such an unbelievable servant and is still a threat at the other end of the pitch as well. They've just been brilliant, and we're talking about them maybe not performing as well, or not controlling the game as much as that we know they're capable of, not hanging onto the ball enough. But for me, it doesn't matter. I don't care how they play, as long as they get there, because if they can get to a major tournament, if they have to win every single game ugly, no one is going to remember. What we're going to remember is getting on that plane to New Zealand to support Ireland at a World Cup. And that's the goal, that's the aim, whatever it takes. And whatever they do, if they do get there, we can analyse it and be critical of it then. But getting there at any cost in any way is what this team should be about and seem to be about. And they shouldn't have to make no apologies for it.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there has been talk of a need for a room. There is a room for improvement there based on the last 2 performances, and something Karen Duggan and Lisa Fallon mentioned on the coverage yesterday. But, Vera Pauw, obviously, and her team will be looking at making those incremental changes. What do you think they will be focused on based on what you've seen in this particular window?
Look, I think that they have the quality players, and the midfield is an area where when we have the ball, we can dominate. So it's just getting that confidence, I think, having the confidence to realize that we can play the ball through the middle. We can hang on to it a little bit more. We can take that extra second to pick out the right pass. Sometimes I feel we do revert to the long ball a little bit, but it's been in situations, I think, especially of late, when there has been massive pressure on this team. And, I'm sure they're still haunted a little bit by those memories of not making the Euros and how close they came. And no matter how you try to coach a team to play a certain way, when they have experienced something like they have, they are going to still feel a little bit of pressure and maybe not always do the right things, not always making the right decision, not showing that composure on the ball. And I think that will come in time. Maybe it'll be a case where we get to a World Cup, we've, got group games and, we're playing unbelievable football. But I understand why these things happen, why they make mistakes, why there isn't as much fluidity, why they revert to a game plan where you have Heather Payne running all over the place, just, trying to get on the ball up top. And it's because of what's gone beforehand. But I do think when we look at the team that we have, and again, they're growing, it's only now, like you guys will know from following women's football, that we have so many players playing at such a high level. We have players that have a better technical ability, but it's just getting everybody to kind of gel and be confident and to realise that, we can play this game. We can play a better game of football. And you would hope eventually they will. But if they don't, I'm okay with it for now.
Yeah, and one other thing, of course, is what awaits in the playoffs. So the draw is on Friday. Now, there's the first round, which involves 6 teams. 3 will go through, and then they will face the 3, which includes Ireland, in the second round. And there's no seeding as well. It's a very convoluted process, Marie.
Yeah, it really is, and I hope you're not looking to me now to try and explain it to me.
No. There's a good piece on the RTE website that Anthony Fine has done, which breaks it down. But it just seems extremely convoluted.
Yeah, and you heard Vera mention it there. Like, I hope they never do anything like this ever again, because it's so hard to figure out. And like, all you can really do, and in a way, it's maybe a good thing, is you can literally just take each game as it comes, because you don't know what's around the corner. And like, if they do get through that next playoff, like, absolutely fantastic. If they don't, we're not sure who or what awaits them and how many games they're going to have to get through to try and get to a World Cup. But we do know that on Friday we're going to find out which team that they are up against, and essentially it's a cup final. Like, it'll be a winner takes all. Trying to get the win. But like, one good thing that I was looking at the teams that they could potentially face, and having watched the Euros, and I'd say a lot of people will be the same. Like, I watched the Euros and thought to myself, Ireland would look right at home here, when you're looking at teams like Belgium and Iceland and Portugal. And I think that whoever they face, having seen what they play like in the big stage, and obviously they know them all so well as well, that Ireland will be a match for these teams that maybe who we would have perceived as being too good for us. And again, Vera and her policy and philosophy of playing higher ranked teams, like, that's going to come into play, or could come into play, if they do get somebody that would be perceived as better than them in this playoff, because they've done it now in the past, and they've gone and they faced the big teams that they weren't expected to beat and gone toe to toe with them. So like, they'll be experienced in those situations. And like, Raf, it's a thing that, like, it's only now over the last few years that these players are getting the experience of playing in these high pressured situations. They're now in, like, the women's, like in the Super League, and they're playing against these players that they mightn't have done so before. So all that's just taking a little bit of time to realize that, okay, we can cope with all of this. Like, we are comfortable in our surrounds, and, we can go out and win big games and deal with whatever comes at them. And like, that's just taking a bit of time, but I feel they're there now for that situation. And we saw it. Would they have beaten a Slovakia and a Finland in the past? They could have, but it would have been maybe a little bit trickier than they've shown in the last couple of weeks. Like, they're able to deal with things that are thrown at them now, I feel.
Yeah, and Paul, just alluding to that, actually, just looking at the teams that are involved in the first round of the playoffs, and some of them we've just seen them playing in the Euros, so Austria and Belgium and Portugal, and then of course there's Scotland, Wales, and Bosnia in there as well. Who knows who comes out of that, especially with the way the draw is made. But is there anything, Ireland, and Denise O'Sullivan, who we'll be speaking to very shortly, has spoken about not really fearing anybody, but is there anything that you've seen in the Euros that would make you think maybe there are certain teams you'd want to avoid?
Yeah, I think most importantly, before we actually look at the teams, the fact that we only have to go through one round is absolutely huge. Like, myself and Marie were talking about it last night, and I think the probability is that if we win our playoff game, that we will go to the final tournament. So only having to play one game is huge. I think when you go down through the list, Belgium were very unlucky against Sweden, I think it was, in the European Championships, and is probably one of the sides that could have gone further in that competition. And I think when you have that confidence of recently playing in a major tournament and being very unlucky to get knocked out, you probably have the desire, and the team has the belief to actually go again within a World Cup. So naturally enough, the teams that kind of spring off the page will, one, be Belgium, and secondly, maybe Austria. you know, you look at any tournament that we've qualified for, Raf, men's or women's, we've always been a little lucky with our playoff draw. If you think back to Estonia, you think back to Iran, we certainly could do with maybe drawing maybe a playing style a little closer to home, the likes of a Wales or the likes of a Scotland, whereby there's maybe less of a fear factor because the players are playing against or with these type of players on a weekly basis. So that might suit our playing style, and then maybe getting away from maybe more of the so-called perceived bigger nations, the likes of a Belgium or Austria at this time would certainly do as well. But we'll soon find out on Friday what the permutations will be and where we're going to be traveling to.
Yeah, and just on that as well, I mean, a point Karen Duggan was making, Marie, was, you know, looking through it, Iceland were quite difficult opponents when Ireland were playing them in friendlies last year. So she kind of suggested that might be one to avoid. But then on the other hand, she mentioned Portugal, who looked, you know, technically brilliant during the Euros, and the fact that Ireland have done well against the likes of Sweden and Finland in the group were a lot more direct, that maybe avoiding a technical team like Portugal would be more beneficial.
Yeah, like it probably would be more beneficial, all right, but like at the same time, like it is a one-off game and anything can happen. And watching the girls over the last couple of weeks and you know, over the last campaign, and that their confidence is going to be high, and momentum is such a powerful thing. I know it's a cliche and everything, but like we're seeing them now. You know, we saw, and this really impressed me, we saw them against Finland, and the outpouring of emotion afterwards, and Paul alluded to it at the top as well, like they were, it felt like they'd qualified for a World Cup. They were able to manage that, which is a really difficult thing in sport, and come out then a few days later and put that performance in against Slovakia. I just feel that no matter who they get, like luck will come into it. I would just have faith in them that they're going to be able to go out. They know what's at stake. And like, you know, like again, lots of women in football have been on a journey, but this team in particular, they have been on an unbelievable journey over the last 5 years, and have came through so much and dealt with the pressure that has been put on them as well. Like in a perfect world, you'd get a Wales or a Scotland, and you know the girls would know each other inside out from all the years of playing against each other and playing each other in leagues and that. But I think if they got a Portugal as well, you know, they'd be able to figure it out. They'd be able to find a way to unlock a technical team. Like we have really good players as well, you know, like we've Katie McCabe, we have Denise, like Jessica Zhu got a player of the match performance against Slovakia. I thought she struggled against Finland a little bit, but was able to put in an unbelievable performance against Slovakia. And you know, she's a player as well that when she has a bit of confidence, like she has the technical ability to be creative and to unlock defenses and to make her mark as well. So look, maybe I'm being overconfident about it, but I just don't see why we shouldn't be overly confident about it because of everything that they've achieved and the potential that's in the squad.
Yeah, but at the same time as well, would there be a kind of benefit? And we're naturally going to be underdogs, I would say, just because of the nature of the teams that are going to be in that draw. And I mean, the ones that have already qualified for tournaments before. And, you know, I guess sometimes as a football nation, we've often thrived on that, Paul.
Yeah, we have. And I think Marie's point there is I'm not sure we'll fear too much. So we'll happily probably go in as underdogs into whatever fixture it is that we're likely to face. But I think what's most important is just that momentum, that belief that the players will have amongst themselves as a squad, as a unit, that irrespective of who we go up against, we'll always give ourselves a chance. The fact that we don't concede many goals, Raf, is vitally important when you go into a playoff situation. It always gives yourself a chance within a 90-minute game. And we've proven at times that a set piece is a real route to goal. I think if we're a little more accurate within our play, particularly in possession of the football, if we can improve in that sense, well, then we will give ourselves a really good shot. But if we go in, listen, I don't think it really matters whether or not we go in as underdogs or we go in as favourites. The way they've conducted themselves over the last 7 days with both of those fixtures would give me enough confidence to say that they're going to be well equipped to head into this playoff fixture. But I'll go back to it again. It is so important that we finished in the top 3 of those second place teams, because with just one game to prepare and one game to look forward to, we can really put our full focus into it.
Yeah, because there were goals, Raf, as well, though.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, that's not something that we always associate with Irish football teams. But like, our goals come from a variety of different players. You know, we'd seen Lily Agg coming on there and doing the business when she needed to. Denise scoring the last day. You know, we know what Katie can do as well. And we have plenty of players on that pitch that can throw in Louise Quinn from the set piece as well. And, that's almost like a bit of a luxury that we've never had before, that we're able to create chances and have players that are able to finish them. So when you put that together with the defence that we have as well, Courtney doing well, a decent midfield, if everybody could just function at the top of their game on the big day, there will be teams there that will fear us. Like, they'll be looking at Katie McCabe going, like, we're watching her in the Women's Super League week in, week out. They have a world-class player there. They have Denise O'Sullivan as well, another world-class player as well. They have players that have come through a huge amount, will pretty much probably die for each other out there. And I think maybe when we're at home, when we're sitting down and we're analysing, we kind of take it for granted a little bit that we have the players that we have. And we didn't always have them, and we might not always have them, but there is a really good crop here now. And Vera too, like, Vera knows how to get the best out of them and knows how to go out and win games.
Speaking of goal scorers, we were speaking to Denise O'Sullivan, the scorer of the winning goal for Ireland against Slovakia, which ensured that Vera Pauw's side go straight into the second round of the World Cup playoffs. And fresh from returning home from Slovakia, it was straight into the launch of the European Week of Sport, which will run from the 23rd to the 30th of September and aims to get people active. So here's our chat with Denise O'Sullivan. As we, speaking of goals and, players making timely runs into the box, Denise O'Sullivan did that last night, and she's also made a very timely appearance on the podcast now. Denise, congrats. There was a lot of pressure coming into this window with ahead of the game against Finland, and then obviously last night's game against Slovakia, but 2 1-0 wins. And not only are you in a playoff, but you're into the second round of it and avoid any pitfalls that happen in the first round of it. So, like, how are you feeling today? Obviously tired, but you must be delighted as a squad as well.
Yeah, a bit tired. Obviously the last few days, the last week has been a emotional roller coaster, highs and of the Finland game, and then trying to get back down to earth again to prepare for the Slovakia game. But all I can say is we're absolutely delighted as a squad, and I'm just filled with pride and emotion right now. So it's great, and I'm very happy.
Yeah, and how did you look to manage the week? Because obviously the high of beating Finland and doing the double over them, and that put you into the playoff, but then knowing that you have to follow it up to try and, you have that target of maybe avoiding that first round of the playoffs. Like, how did you approach that week leading into it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously getting to 3 points, first of all, was the most important thing against Finland, and we done that. And the next few days was all about just getting refocused again, doing our recovery. Vera gave us a day off as a team to just do whatever we wanted. So I just think it was kind of switching off mentally for that day, doing what we wanted as a team to get prepared to go back training again. But it was just to switch that mindset to say, look, yeah, we have made a playoff, but we have a long way to go still. And we wanted to go to Slovakia to get those 3 points. And that was always in the back of our minds. And we didn't really need much motivation. I didn't personally. I knew what was on the line. I knew what was at stake for the team. So it was just getting refocused again, getting as fresh as we can to go out and try and perform and get the 3 points.
Yeah, and we'll talk about your goal very, very shortly, but in terms of the way you manage the game, you seem to press very high early on, and you seem to win possession very high up the pitch at the beginning, and then about 15 minutes in, the game sort of balanced out, and then you were playing a little bit more on the counter. Was that sort of part of the plan?
I think it just changed. I just don't think you can press high for 90 minutes straight, so it was just about game management. And for us, we went at them and I thought we done very well in the first 15 minutes of the game. And then we kind of just dropped off a bit, kept our shape, kept our organisation and caught them on the break. And that's how we scored a goal. Just Jesu putting them under pressure and winning the ball back, going forward. But I did think coming out in the second half, Slovakia just came out. Katie said it came out to kick us really and break the game up. And that's what they done. They done it well. But it was just about us keeping control of the game in that second half, seeing the game out, and we were very happy we were able to do that in the end.
Yeah, and some of the challenges were a little bit were a little bit over the top, to say the least. I think there was one where it was just in that second half, Katie McCabe is caught by the follow through, and I think you were right on the scene there, trying to draw the referee's attention to it as well.
Yeah, at that stage I had to try and keep my head because it was a dangerous tackle, but Vera kind of touched on it before the game, not to try and get any yellow cards, because we have had a few yellow cards before that. So it was important to just as much as you can try and keep your head in those moments. When you're seeing your teammate being kicked like that, it's kind of hard to do, but I think we done it well as a team, and managed the game really well in the end.
Yeah, and the goal itself, as you said, Jess, you won it high up the pitch, and then you combined with her, got it out to Heather Payne. But you had a lot of work to do because of the way the trajectory of the ball, kind of where how it deflected off the Slovakian defender. So could you just talk us through that?
Yeah, first of all, it was a great team goal. I think the big thing there was Jess winning that ball, fighting down for that ball. That was really important. And then I played Heather in behind. Heather cut the ball back, and it was just kind of a bad clearance by the Slovakian player, but the ball actually fell at an awkward position for me, kind of behind me, so I had to try and get my body around it, but I managed to do it somehow, and just seeing it go in the back of the net, and it was a relief to get off the mark. I think that's part of my job. It's my responsibility to assist and score goals in this team, so I was very happy to do it last night and help the team get 3 points.
Yeah, and you've 6 goals in the campaign, Katie McCabe with 7, and your role, kind of playing in those pockets, trying to create and also get on the end of things as well. Is that something you've specifically spoken to Vera Pauw about? Contributing to within this system.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know coming into this camp whether I would play the deeper role or the 10, but I think with just some things in the team, I just was in that position to play the deeper role, and that's where Vera wanted me, and that was the best for the team. So I took that on board, and I was kind of more of a box to box player, trying to start that build up, and then try and get forward as well. So it was a lot of ground to cover. It was tough work, but I do that for my club week in, week out, so it's a second nature now. And as I said, whatever position I put in for this team, I'll just give it 100% and try and help the team get 3 points, and that's what we done last night. So very happy.
Denise, I've spent the last 15 minutes telling the two lads how confident I am about whatever comes next for you guys. Looking at the draw, saying it's all fine. Like, don't worry about it. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, it's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster, honestly. Obviously, you're getting into the second round, which is really, really good. We're going to come up against, no matter what team, it's going to be a high level team. It's going to be a really tough game, but then after hearing, even if we win the game, we could potentially still have to go to New Zealand. That's just mind blown to me. But look, it is what it is. And but I think the most important thing for us is just to focus on this game on the 11th, be prepared as best we can, and try and win.
Looking at the teams there, and we saw a lot of them play in the Euros, and a lot of the conversation coming out from us watching the Euros anyway was that, like, you would have looked right at home there. Like, there would have been no fear for you when you're looking at some of the teams in the groups. It would have been a situation where you would have held your own.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and that has shown in these games. I think in this campaign we've been good as a team. I think we can still improve in a lot, but we've come a long way. And as I said, I think we have good momentum now going into this game on the 11th. The last 4 games we've had clean sheets. Our backline has been phenomenal. The goalkeeper has been excellent. So we are pretty confident as a team, and I don't think we fear anyone now at this stage. But as I said again, I keep harping on, we have a long way to go. It's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, and what are the areas of improvement you're looking at as a team? Obviously, the fact that you've got as far as you have to the second round of the playoffs, and still you can look at areas of improvement. Obviously, it's a great sign as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always areas where you can improve in every team. But I think we're always been the team that are well organised, defensively very good. We'll throw our bodies in front of the line to stop a goal. I think that's just the Irish mentality that we have in us. But I think now it's just adding to that goal scoring, creating more opportunities going forward. I think being more dynamic on the break, picking out passes and try and make those passes that are tough, So I think that's definitely areas of improvement that we can keep working on and just try and score more goals as a team.
From a personal point of view, Denise, like yourself and maybe more of the senior members of the squad have popped up at really important times. Do you feel, I guess, from a personal point of view, that this is the right time in your career? Do you feel like you're in the form of your career?
I do, yeah. And for me, I'm very competitive. I think I can always do better. And look, I have 6 games in the campaign, but I wanted more. To be honest, I would have been happy with a bit more. But I think it's about the team, and I think that the mix of youth and experience is very important in the team. And I think whatever I can bring is that's really important. Whether I'm playing in that deeper role, whether I'm playing in the 10, I know I'll work really hard, and I do think I'm at a good stage in my career where I'm in top shape. And yeah, I just want to keep getting better, keep improving, and be a good team player.
Yeah, and the widening of the squad as well must be beneficial, both as a motivator for yourself individually and then collectively as well. I mean, we've seen Lily Ag being introduced and then scoring against Finland and, playing alongside you there yesterday against Slovakia, and then Megan Campbell coming back from injury, Claire Reardon slotting in. Obviously there's unfortunate injuries like Savannah McCarthy, but it just feels like such a much wider squad, and seems to be something Vera Pauw has built over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we do. We have a very strong squad now, I would say. And obviously those 4 girls getting injured was a big blow to us, but we were just able to put players in there and they looked really comfortable in those positions. So we do have great depth in the squad right now. And it just shows Lily Ag coming on the other night, scoring not only that, but having a great game when she came on. It just shows how valuable each player is to this team. And what players can bring is, we can go to new levels. I think we have a special squad.
Yeah, and just how big a motivator was watching the European Championships from afar, because again, you're playing against some of those teams in the qualifiers, and then, in the playoff as well, there's a potential that you're going to meet teams that were there, but, you watching that from afar, knowing that you can mix it with them.
Yeah, it was bittersweet, honestly. I was wishing I was there, but it was good to watch. I mean, that tournament was phenomenal. To see England win that was really cool. To see their fans get behind them and what they've done in that country for the sport and all over the world, to be honest. So to be able to watch them, and they're all high level teams at that tournament, and know that we can come up against them at any stage. So it was really good to see.
All right, so that is Denise O'Sullivan speaking to us earlier about her goal-scoring performance against Slovakia, 1-0 win, which of course takes Ireland into the second round of the World Cup playoffs. But there's plenty of other things going on, of course, with Shamrock Rovers involved in European action as well. As we know, they're in the Europa Conference League group stage, and first game up this Thursday, 8 p.m. kickoff, is against Djurgarden of Sweden, and that's at Tala Stadium. And Paul, I know from how you viewed this group that the home games are going to be massive for Shamrock Rovers.
100%, Raf, and I think they've shown really good form, particularly at Tala. Not just this year, but in previous campaigns as well. If you think back to the Slovan Bratislava game, and then this time round, particularly the Djurgardens and the Ferencváros games, really solid performances. And you would imagine that if we are to see Shamrock Rovers put together some points, or a good point tally, the majority of those games, you would imagine you would see the points coming at home. And starting this Thursday, you would look at the group. And Molde, Genk and Djurgarden, you would imagine that this is probably a fixture where they would fancy themselves to get something from it. It is a difficult one. These European games are always going to be difficult. I think when you look at the qualifying games that they did win at home, Djurgardens and Ferencváros were probably, either they perceived the tie to be over, or they thought the tie was done and dusted given the first leg. So maybe we can't read too much into those ties, but the most important thing is that they're there right now, and we know the money that is at hand here for every point that's picked up. So massive opportunity for Shamrock Rovers. I think it'll be really interesting, Raf, to see what 11 Stephen Bradley does go with. Jack Byrne was obviously extremely good when he came off the bench in that game against Ferencváros, and you could see what he brought to the side. But I was also at the game against Bows last Friday night in Dalymount, and Jack, by his own standards, was probably a little below par. And then maybe he suits playing those European games where it's a little more open and the opposition will allow you to have a bit more of the ball. But if he could replicate the form that he showed in Tala last Thursday night, just his ability to create chances, to open teams up, even a set piece delivery, he brings so much more to that Shamrock Rovers team. And if you can get him firing, if you can combine that with kind of the platform that the rest of the team have given Shamrock Rovers, they're certainly going to be within a chance come Thursday night. And let's hope that there's a massive crowd. I'm sure it'll be packed to the walls. I'm sure Marie Crowe will be there as well. But the whole league is behind them, and fingers crossed that they can pick up a result.
Yeah, and Djurgården, I mean, within the Swedish league at the moment, they're in brilliant form. I mean, they've won their last 3 league matches, unbeaten in the competition since May, and are sitting second, 1 point off the top. And you look at their squad as well, with 6 players with some international background, or at least international experience, from their captain Magnus Eriksson, and then defenders Marcus Danielsson and Pierre Bengtsson. the only thing with the club, actually, and interesting enough, they don't have a huge amount of experience as a club within European group stages. But even with that, Marie, I guess Shamrock Rovers will still need to utilise that underdog tag.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you kind of dig into the previews, because you're getting a completely different perspective than we would have here. So, we're looking at the Shamrock Rovers team and talking about the last few years and how good they've done domestically, and those last couple of performances, albeit the ties were over, but still putting in solid performances in their home ground in Tala. And then you go and look at a preview from a different perspective, and it is quite interesting then that you are branded, or they are branded as underdogs, and it's in a way it's almost hard to see that, because you're so familiar with the players here and what they're what they're capable of, and how much European experience they have. But you mentioned Djurgarden there and the form that they're in, and it does seem like they are coming in very confident, will have a lot going for them just in terms of the amount of goals they're conceding. 15 in the 6 games that they've played, and conceded 5. So they are going to be a challenge. But all you can do in these situations when you don't really know a huge amount about a team, and we will by the end of this, as we've seen in other situations when teams have got to group stages, it's just look at the positives, and there are plenty of them in that Shamrock Rovers team, and the experience, as you mentioned there, is pretty huge, and it's European experience, which does count for a lot. And you can't really look further than Ronan Finn there, and the amount of campaigns that he's under his belt. But Stephen Bradley also, he's still a really young manager, but he's gone through quite a lot, and what he'll have learned even from those Champions League qualifiers and Europa League qualifiers, and how he was able to almost fix things and make them better as the games went on, or the ties went on. He'll be able to draw a huge amount from it. But I can't sit here and say I know how it's going to go, because I don't know enough about Djurgarden. But I do know that, as Paul said, I'll be there. I'll have my 3 sons there. They're Shamrock Rovers fans. We'll be in the South Stand. It's sold out. All their friends are going. It's going to be a great night. Tala's really became a brilliant place to bring families to, and you would think that Thursday night, a full house, a real family occasion, good atmosphere, and a bit like what Denise O'Sullivan had said there, it's never lost on the players what's on the line here as well, and hopefully they'll be able to draw on all those positives they experience, and put in a performance, and at least get the campaign off to a good start, because we had to buy the tickets in bundles of 3. So the longer this goes on, or the campaign is interesting, for the better for all the people who've bought the tickets.
Yeah, and in terms of, as we said, they're not Djurgården aren't a team we're going to be too familiar with beforehand. Yeah. Obviously, they have played Shamrock Rovers, but 20 years ago in qualifiers in Europe. But in terms of players to look out for, Victor Edvarsson, who's the top scorer with 6 goals, also Joel Asoro, and as I said, the captain Magnus Eriksson is also someone to look out for. But from a Shamrock Rovers point of view, Paul, the challenge that they wouldn't have had 11 years ago when they were involved in the Europa League group stages was that sort of quick turnaround, especially with the World Cup at the end of the year, which means the European campaign is condensed, and all 6 matches against Djurgården, Molde and Ghent, it's followed by a domestic fixture straight away, unlike, as I said, 11 years ago, where I think it was only half of those fixtures were directly followed by a domestic fixture. So we're going to see the Shamrock Rovers squad really tested.
We certainly will, but I think what Stephen Bradley has done quite well over the last number of seasons and transfer windows is he's built this squad to be competitive on all fronts. And even if you look at the game against Bows last Friday, they'd Sean Kavanagh, they'd Richie Till, they'd Neil Ferrugia, they'd Idemo Maku on the bench. The majority of these players, Raf, walk into most other starting 11s within the league. So he has got the ability to chop and change come that league fixture when they play on Sunday. I think it is against Finn Harps. The good news is it's at home, so it limits the amount of travel that they're going to have to do between the next fixture against Genk away. But there are certainly going to be challenges that are going to come with regards to the fatigue and just the mental energy that's going to be, I guess, expelled over the next coming weeks. But they've had to balance that throughout this qualifying campaign, and they've managed to find their way into the group stage. But what you do hope is that they just keep those key players fit. If you think about the European campaigns and when they have looked good, Graham Burke came off the bench on one of the occasions and he changed the game. Jack Burke came off the bench and change the game. And neither of those players have really been fully fit for a consistent period of time over the last 6 months. So if they could get both of those players fit and ready and back to somewhat near the best, that gives them a massive chance in these European games. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them rested within the league and just maybe get their feet up and rely on maybe the players who don't play in those European games to get the job done. But it is vitally important that they continue with the league, because that Champions route is why they're here. That's why they're in the group stage. They need to ensure for the continued growth of the club that they win the league again. I'm sure Stephen Bradley will be massively frustrated with some of the points that they've dropped in the league in recent weeks, because he would have wanted to put this campaign to bed as soon as possible so they can focus on the European fixtures. But like any club, like any manager, they'll just take it one game at a time. They'll take, I'm sure all focus is on Thursday night. Once that's put to bed, it'll be straight on to Finn Harps again. But they've certainly got the numbers, they've got the personnel, and they've also got the experience to deal with what's ahead.
And in terms of the template for this game on Thursday, we know what the formation is going to be. Largely, we know which players are going to be selected, but how do they approach it, especially at home where there is always that temptation to, push forward?
Yeah, well, listen, I don't think Stephen Bradley will massively adjust his tactics nor his beliefs in what his team should be doing for most oppositions, particularly at this level. Like, the Conference League has been brought in, and I'm sure in one sense they're probably happy and comfortable to be playing in the Conference League, because they probably feel as if these are teams that are in and around their level. So the way Shamrock Rovers have always played is with that back five. They'll play the ball out from Manus. If it's not on, they'll go a little more direct to Gaffney or Green or whoever he goes with. But by nature, Shamrock Rovers have always been positive with the ball. They'll always try to play through the thirds. They haven't got a huge amount of pace on either wing or through the middle of the pitch, so they have to be very accurate and compose in their build-up play. They'll play through the thirds. They'll always look to get the likes of Jack Byrne on the ball to create. And I guess when you got willing runners and Ronan Finn and Andy Lyons, get down the sides and try to be successful from there. And if you look at the goals, and if you kind of go back through the games when they've done well, it has been that way. Throw in set pieces and Jack Byrne within the squad, like, they have got a couple of different ways in which they can hurt opposition, but I would not expect the game plan to change based on how they've been going about their play over the last number of years.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Stephen Bradley will probably be frustrated with some of the points they have dropped, and they dropped points, of course, in the derby against Bohemians on Friday. So Burt with the winner in that, and of course Shamrock Rovers also went down to 10 men, and it was a managerless Bohemians as well, with Derek Pender in as interim manager after they parted ways with Keith Long, and that's among the 5 results this weekend. So as I said, Bohemians 1, Shamrock Rovers 0 at Dalymount Park, and then Dundalk drew 0 with Shelburne. St. Pat's continuing their good form with a 2-1 win over Finn Harps, and Derry City also have been bouncing back and a 3-0 win over UCD. And then on Saturday, Sligo Rovers 2, Drogheda United 0. Just on the derby, Paul, I mean, from Vo's point of view, I mean, they've parted ways with Keith Long after a long period in charge, and they're at something of a crossroads. So it was a perfect result for them, especially with the opposition that they were facing.
Yeah, very important for a number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, I think the job Keith Long has done, and I've heard this kind of consistently over the last week, has been amazing, and the journey that he's brought Bohemians on, and maybe it came to a bit of a natural end, but it was very important that they were able to, I guess, show some sort of form between now and the end of the season. And the Dublin Derby is always a great way to do that. And to be fair to Derek Pender and to Trevor Crowley, they were very well organised. There was probably an energy and a bite to their play that we maybe haven't seen in previous weeks, and they certainly got a kick out of that fixture. So really important result. The goal itself was exceptional. Liam Burse, who I think is always a good threat for Bows whenever he plays, just a lovely dummy, and then to bend it into the top corner was superb. But it was a funny old game. Those Bows Rovers games can be very high in energy, very high in aggression, and sometimes a bit low in quality, and that was kind of what it was like last Friday. Probably a very different game than what Shamrock Rovers will play on Thursday. It'll be more possession based, but for Bows, it didn't really matter about how they got the result. It was just important that they got 3 points, and it is an important period of time for them as a club. They're looking to go full time next year. It's important that they get that appointment right, with regards to taking them to the next level and the next step in their journey. So there's been a lot right over the last 3-4 years down in Dalymount Park. journey that they've been on, the support that they've got, the resources they've put into the club has been fantastic. It's just about taking it to the next level. And I'm sure this decision will be thought out very carefully. But if they were to go for Derek Pender, you could do a hell of a lot worse than himself. Somebody who loves the club, knows the club inside out. So yeah, watch this space if this goes well for the remaining fixtures in the season.
Yeah, because
I watched the game just on my phone because I couldn't get the TV to work, so it's difficult to see the full picture. But from what I could see, it did feel like Bows were able to marshal Jack Byrne and Rory Gaffney, and then Dylan Watts got sent off as well. And when you think about the players that you would expect to play well in European games, or that would be really important for Shamrock Rovers, and I think particularly Gaffney, not just for his goal scoring, but also just trouble that he's caused off the ball, and he's running and his work rate and all that. Do you think Stephen Bradley's going to be worried, just given the fact that it was those three key players that weren't performing at their peak?
Maybe slightly, but I just think that the game itself is such a different game. Like, I can't imagine Djurgardens mold or Genk was set up in the way that Bows did, and maybe ended up being a bit more direct. If you look at European games and the way that European teams want to play, they always want to play maybe more in the mold of a Shamrock Rovers, where they get the ball down. And if you look at it, sometimes they're happy enough to sit off and let you have a feel of the ball. And that maybe suits Shamrock Rovers a little better, and particularly those players that you mentioned there. Dylan Watts and Jack Byrne found it really difficult to get into the game the other night. Clark in the middle of the pitch, Livingston in the middle of the pitch for both were very good. They were very dogged. You might not come up against that in Europe. I always feel that the opposition will let you have a bit of a feel of the ball, and you can maybe enjoy yourself and be given a bit more space. But in the final third, you need to be a bit more accurate. So you might see Jack Byrne drop a little deeper just to get involved in the game earlier on. Same with Dylan Watts. And if you can always get those players ticking, you're always within a chance of creating. But yeah, it might be a small bit of a worried Stephen Bradley. I think the form in itself has maybe been a little up and down compared to previous campaigns. So getting that right come Thursday night is going to be important. Listen, Jack Byrne, whenever he's at it, doesn't matter who he's playing against, he's always going to be a serious threat to any side. So your fingers crossed for Shamrock Rovers that he can hit the form, because when he does click into gear, he really is a sight.
Yeah, and from a Bows point of view, as you alluded to, with Derek Pender potentially being a candidate for the job on a permanent basis. I mean, you mentioned his passion, so his post-match comments to RT Sport were, look, I've played for the club, obviously captained the club, coached at the club underage, and I'm a coach at the first team now. One day, would I love to manage Bows? This one's going to be, there's a few asterisks in here for the next sentence, but effing right, I would. So that tells you the level of passion as well. Like, what way do you think Bows will go though? Obviously results could play into Derek Pender's hands if it goes well, but outside of that, who are the candidates you think they would potentially look at that fits the mold of the club?
Well, Jim Crawford was a name that has been kind of touted around. I can't imagine Jim Crawford is going to leave should the 21s qualify for a major tournament. I think naturally enough, it would make sense to then extend his contract with the FAI, and maybe he enjoys that job of developing the players at that age and trying to readying them then for more either senior football with their clubs or onto the senior team with the national side. But I think somebody in that mold is probably where they'd look to take it. Whether or not they bring in a director of football to help out on that side of things as well. But it certainly feels as if they've got a so-called identity about how they want to play. And I would imagine it'd be somebody similar to Keith Long, but somebody who could maybe just take it to that next level. I've also heard Stephen Rice's name banded about, and he's again probably a similar mold to Jim Crawford. Like they're modern coaches. They probably want to play similar to the way that Shamrock Rovers do, get the ball down and play through the thirds, and maybe that's where they see their progression maybe going to. At this moment in time, they're maybe a little more direct. Maybe they want to start playing through midfield and look to be a bit more expansive in their play. But I think, like I mentioned it before, the fact they're going full time, this is an investment into the squad. There's going to be more time spent in the training ground, more time with the players. It's an important appointment, but it's always a difficult job, Raf. Like, to be fair to Keith Long, if you look at the team that started the FAI Cup final and then the team that started the other night against Shamrock Rovers, not many of those players are still there. Dawson Devoy's gone. Even Tierney's gone from last season. Georgie Kelly's gone. Andy Lyons is gone. Cornwall is gone. Buckley is gone. you constantly having to reinvent the wheel. So somebody's going to come in, put a bit of structure on the team, and then hopefully, irrespective of what players are there, they'll have a bit of an identity, but not changing up too much from where Long was, but maybe just trying to bring in the next iteration of that squad.
Yeah, and Bowls of Derry City next on Friday. We'll talk about Derry City very shortly because, of course, they've crept closer to Shamrock Rovers, but also in a way, Dundalk, who play UCD on Friday, also could, depending on matters off the field as well. Marie, I mean, they're not that far off the top in terms of the title race. They're 6 points off. Obviously, they played a couple more games than Shamrock Rovers, but there is the situation with the Sligo Rovers game. So Sligo Rovers beat them 2-0, but they have a disciplinary hearing because of Adam McDonnell's participation in the match having been allegedly suspended. But Sligo Rovers are, of course, contesting this, and their own statement is the club received contradictory communications from the FAI on Adam's possible suspension. Legal advice has been taken, and the club will be represented at the hearing. A further update will follow when available. So, if that were to swing, obviously Dundalk would move 3 points closer to Shamrock Rovers at the top. But it's again, we've talked about convoluted situations with the playoff draw for the Ireland women's team. This is a slightly messy situation as well.
Yeah, and it feels like it's going to be even messier. And when you hear the words contradictory communications from the FAI, I think that there's probably a bit of sympathy there for Sligo Rovers. Yeah, it's one of those things we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. Like, in fairness, like, clubs are professional now. The suspension lists are always emailed out beforehand. You'd have to think that Sligo Rovers aren't going to be full on a fast one, that there was a mistake made, a breakdown of communication. It'll be interesting to see the details that come out. Most things are done now by email as well. So the fact that they're seeking legal advice, you would think that, and hearing that there is evidence somewhere along the way, or they feel like that they have a case that they can go forward with this. But, from Sligo Rovers' point of view, it's going to be an interesting one to follow. And like, when you're looking at a league and it's coming to this stage and there's only, it could swing a game here or there, like, these points are important. And you can argue the rights and the wrongs about trying to get points over someone else's mistake. But if it brings somebody closer to the top of the table, or it, influences a league title going your way, then, people are going to go after it. And I think, especially with the fact that there's going to be so many fine margins over the next few weeks, Shamrock Rovers are going to have all of these games. They've lost to Bows. There's so little in it now. The talk of them marching away with the title isn't really there as much anymore, because you can see that they are stretched. Even though they do have that depth in the squad, they are a little bit more vulnerable because of all the fixtures coming. So Dundalk are going to want the points. Sligo Rovers are going to want the points. There's going to be a hearing, a case, and we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, and Derry City obviously kind of in that mix as well. We'll be watching very closely, and we've got the Bohemians game live on RT2 and the RT Player on Friday, so we'll be watching that one very, very closely. But Paul, I mean, Derry's form, we've talked about, like, obviously the start of the season brilliant, and then they went off the boil, but they just seem to be coming back into it now, and with maybe a sniff of a chance, with, as we've said, Shamrock Rovers being heavily involved in Europe and a huge fixture list coming up as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're still 4 points behind Shamrock Rovers, and Shamrock Rovers have a game in hand. So the ball is most certainly in Stephen Bradley's court. But yeah, you mentioned it there. I think this season was always going to be a bit topsy-turvy for Derry City, just with regards to the number of new faces that they were bringing into the building. It's only Rory's second season. Well, kind of, he's only coming into about 12 months now, but second playing season in charge. And they hit that kind of bad patch of form, and they couldn't really seem to get out of it. And they dropped too many points along the way there, Raf, and that's probably going to ultimately cost them. But I think, for whether it's been Dundalk or Derry, anytime they've kind of gotten close to Shamrock Rovers, they've then fallen away again. And yeah, I'm sure that would be something that Rory be looking to maybe rectify next year, where they need a bit more consistency in their performance. But I think what is vitally important for them is that Michael Duffy is back fit. Like, it was such a huge loss earlier on in the season when he broke his leg. He scored the other night against UCD. If you can guess, we spoke about Jack Byrne at Shamrock Rovers. Michael Duffy, when he was at Dundalk, was arguably the player of the league on many occasions, and he was consistently good. He popped up with so many goals. He's such a natural dribbler of the ball, and he's very exciting to watch whenever he does get going. So if he can keep fit, you certainly give them a really good chance of hanging on to second place. I just feel like the gap between the two sides at this moment in time is too great that if the pressure really came to the fore, I think Shamrock Rovers will kick on again.
Yeah, and the fixtures this weekend: Shelbourne against Sligo Rovers, UCD against Dundalk, Derry City against Bohemians, Drogheda United against Pats, and Shamrock Rovers against Finn Harps. So 2 tough games there also for the 2 teams battling at the bottom. In the first division, Cork City are at Waterford this Friday, and with the gap that they have, albeit with Galway United and Waterford both having a game in hand, but especially Galway 8 points behind them, I think with Cork City would be looking at this as a means of sort of consolidating their hold of this automatic promotion place, especially with time starting to run out in the season, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, it's been an interesting watch. I think the job that Colin Healy has done at Cork is just remarkable. Just blooding in such a number of young players into that team and the progression that we've seen. But it's always really difficult to tell outside of the team who's maybe running away with it at the top of the league which way it's going to go on the basis of that playoff system. Once you get in there, it's a real lottery with regards to who's actually going to get into that playoff then with the team from the Premier Division table. But it's an interesting one. I just think that the job that Colin has done down there is just so admirable. And I think to get Cork back up into the first division and hopefully with crowds and bringing that part of the country back into the Premier Division will be huge. And then outside of that, you can maybe take your pick of who's going to likely get promoted.
Yeah, and Galway are Cove Ramblers and not in the best of form, lost 2 and drew 1 of the last 3 league games since mid-July. But also in the Women's National League, a huge amount of big fixtures there. Sligo Rovers against Galway, DLR Waves against Athlone, who are doing really well in third place, Treaty United against Bohemians, and then the 2 big games that will affect the top: Wexford against Cork City, and then Shelbourne against Peamount. Again, a huge game. And with the way the table is, Marie, there was a point maybe a couple of months ago where we were looking at Shelbourne running away with it, but Wexford have got within 2 points now, and even Peamount, should they beat Shelbourne, would only be then 5 points adrift. So it's shaping up for a very exciting run in now.
Yeah, it really is. And look, it delivered last year when it came to final day excitement, and you would hope that something similar will happen as well. It's been a disappointing season though for Peamount so far, and to be sitting in 4th place, it's not where they want to be. But all credit to Shelbourne and Wexford and Athlone as well. They've really led the charge. They've kept Peamount at bay. But I do think that with everything that's going on in Shamrock Rovers as well, the fact they're going to introduce a team next year, and there's a lot of talk as well that it could be some professional or semi-professional contracts on offer there as well. It's just a really interesting time for women's football in Ireland, and I think that if that does happen, it'll be, we'll be kind of keeping an eye on what happens with the Peamount players and how that all works out, because they're pretty much a stone's throw from each other, and it could end up changing the face of football here in Ireland. I think it's a really interesting 12 months, and those top teams are going to be. They're going to want to be on top before things start to change, because I do feel that domestically things are going to change here as well.
Yeah, and also last night we had Champions League coverage, Celtic against Real Madrid, and a really brave Celtic performance as well. But obviously Real Madrid, as we know, have pedigree and eventually eked out a treat. Well, eked out is probably the wrong word when you win 3-0, but based on the first half performance, certainly you would have thought Celtic gave them a good run for their money. But Marie, I know you were watching this one particularly closely. They had previewed that they would be bold in the way they approached it, and Celtic didn't disappoint on that front.
No, they didn't. And for 45 minutes, you're kind of sitting there in disbelief. I think a lot of people thought that Celtic were going to put up a really good challenge for them, but I don't think that people thought they were going to be as good as they were in those opening 45 minutes. They're the ones created the more chances. I thought they were going to score at some stage anyway, and felt disappointed for them that they didn't. But Ange Postecoglou has been a revelation there, and we'll probably end up talking about Chelsea in a while, and I'm surprised that he hasn't been linked with down there yet. But he's the one who came out and said, look, we're going to play a certain way, we're going to put on a show for fans, we're going to get them out of their seats. And for those 45 minutes, I'd say there wasn't any Celtic fans sitting down, because there was so much excitement. Unfortunately then for them in the second half, I suppose, look, it's a cliche as well, but Real Madrid did start to show their class. And look, they're the European champions. They have some of the best players in the world. You wouldn't have been able to tell that in the opening 45 minutes. And, they pushed on. But like, it's strange to come away from a 3-0 victory. And I know moral victories don't matter for anything, but I think it was more just an examination of where they're at. And the fact now that Celtic fans are going to come away and say, like, look, we look right at home here. We belong at this level of European football. With a little bit of work, it's something to aim for, to be able to go out and challenge these big teams and have those nights in Europe. Because last night, like, just watching it on the TV, looked absolutely unbelievable there, and you couldn't help but be excited for them for what the rest of the group games hold.
Yeah, and then Chelsea at the end of the coverage last night after the Celtic Real Madrid match, I did hear Kevin Doyle making a point. He didn't think Chelsea were going to finish in the top four, but more importantly, he said he didn't think Thomas Tuchel would see out the season. And then I woke up this morning, and then a couple of hours trying to reacclimatise to life, and then I just looked at my phone, and Thomas Tuchel is gone. Paul, I mean. I know Kevin Doyle, like, I'm not saying Kevin Doyle is Nostradamus, but it happened a lot more quickly than anyone would have expected.
It certainly did. I mean, I was very surprised, but maybe not shocked, just in the sense that it's very much in Chelsea's DNA to change their managers, even pre-Abramovich, during Abramovich, and now post-Abramovich. But I mean, since that new regime has gone in, what they have shown is that they do want to change the regime, and they want to put their own kind of stamp on it. They made that clear when they got rid of Peter Cech and when they got rid of Mariana Granovskia, I think that's the pronunciation, but that was a clear kind of indication that they were going to take it in their own direction. And I mean, particularly last night, there was noticeable tension between Tuchel and the players, and Tuchel doesn't really hide that very well. He was kind of waving his hands around, and he was marching up and down his technical area, clearly frustrated with the performances of certain individuals. And you combine that with some of the results that we've seen, particularly Southampton and Leeds away from home, the nature of the goals. At times it did look as if players were maybe not putting in the performances or that level of fight that you would have come to expect of a top team fighting for their manager. But there was noticeable tension within the group. He tried to get rid of Ziyech, he tried to get rid of Pulisic, he sold Lukaku, he got rid of Werner, and some of those players didn't actually end up leaving the building. And I can imagine that created a bit of a tense atmosphere within the dressing room. And I mean, particularly when you think that, Pulisic is American and Pulisic is a big name back in the States. With these owners coming in, I'm sure they want to ensure that they get the most out of him. But it is a surprising decision. It looks as if now, at this moment in time, that Graham Potter seems pretty nailed on for the job. Brighton have given Chelsea permission to speak to him. He's done an incredible job at Brighton. Bowley at the Dodgers has had the same manager. I know it's a completely different environment, but he's had the same person in charge for the last 7-8 years. He probably wants somebody in that mold, and maybe didn't feel that Tuchel was that man. But it's a bit of a roller coaster with Bowley in charge. In American sports, the owners lift the trophies, and I get the feeling if Chelsea were to win anything, Bowley would be right down there on the pitch with his hands on it first.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's surprising, but I don't think they'll take their time, Raf. I'd say they'll be quite swift and decisive with appointing their next manager.
Yeah, it looks like it is Graham Potter, as you said. But I think that brings us to an end anyway. Marie, thanks a mil for coming on this week. And also, Paul, next week it'll be Liverpool versus Ajax live on RT2 and the RT Player at 7:30. So we'll chat to you next week.